Hi everyone, welcome to this week's session of the Google Plus Platform Office Hours. This week we're going to be talking about the new release of the Hangouts APIs, version, which number?
1.1.
1.1. It adds a lot of cool new functionality. We have some engineers from the team joining us and a bunch of people from the community, so we should have a nice, fun discussion. So, before we dive into stuff, let's tell you a little bit about ourselves. I'm Jenny Murphy. I'm a developer programs engineer here at Google. I focus mostly on the REST APIs and the social plugins, like the +1 button, but I like hacking Hangout apps when I have the time. And I'm joined here today by...
Hi, I'm Martin. I'm a software engineering intern at Google, and I'm working on the Google Plus Stream frontend.
Very cool. And if you remember, he's actually been on the other end of these Hangouts pretty often.
I've been, yes.
So it's great to have you in person.
Yeah.
And hi, yes, everybody. I'm John Berry. I'm the developer advocate for Google Plus, working on Hangouts.
I'm Wolf Dobson. I'm the developer programs engineer on Hangouts.
Yeah. And then joining us over the Hangout, from left to right, from my view, we have Alan.
Hi there, I'm Alan Furstenberg. I'm an outside developer. I mostly develop Hangouts, Hangout apps. I'm most known for my Caption app. And the app appearing in my upper left-hand corner is the My Time Hangout app.
We also have Gerwin.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gerwin from Austria. I do lots of stuff with the Google APIs for fun, actually. So probably my most well-known Hangout app is the Comment Tracker. But I'm doing lots of different stuff with WebGL, and I just tried the face tracking thing, and yeah, just playing around really.
Cool. We're actually using the Comments Tracker today, so it's
cool.
JD?
Hey, I'm JD Salazar, and I'm a developer on the Hangouts API team.
Next, Moritz.
Hi, I'm Moritz from Germany, and I'm also playing around with the Hangouts API a lot, and I think I'm most common for my two apps. I developed the Hangout Lower Third and the Hangout Volume Control apps.
And last but not least, Richard.
And I'm Richard Dunn. I'm the lead for the Hangouts API team.
Cool. According to your lower thirds, you're apparently Google.
You're all of Google.
You're all of Google.
All in one for all, that's
yeah.
what you say.
Cool. So we're talking about the latest release of the Hangouts API. Richard, would you like to give us a little overview of what's been added in this release?
Sure. Yeah, we added a bunch of stuff this time around. The first thing we added was facial motion detection and getting the data of where the face is. So in the past we've had images that can track the face, and now we're actually exposing that data so that any app can use it to display whatever they like, or use it to control a game or anything like that. We also released a new way of broadcasting messages to instances of your app, which lets it go much faster. Use it for things like sending mouse movements or tracking an object in a game, things like that. We added static overlays, so images that you can overlay over your video that don't track a facial feature but are like fixed on the screen. And there's obviously examples of that running in this Hangout, the Lower Thirds app, which is fixing the names there, and I believe Alan's Time is probably using that as well. And then we added a bunch of miscellaneous stuff, ways to figure out whether the Hangout is an on-air Hangout, whether it's a public Hangout, and we did some changes actually based on developer feedback, which was allowing you to see the names of people that aren't using the app. I believe Moritz needed that for volume control because you'd like to be able to identify whose volume you're affecting. I think that's about it.
This also has the first of the on-air features, correct?
Yeah. So we just started with whether the Hangout is an on-air Hangout and whether it's broadcasting, and we obviously plan to add a bunch of stuff in that area soon.
And there's both the methods as well as events for that.
Correct.
Very cool. It's a lot of neat stuff. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what people will do with some of these features. I'm kind of excited about the face tracking on the data stream, because I think there's a lot of cool potential. I'm waiting for someone to write a robotic camera that tracks the faces. I'll do that. If someone else does it, I'll send you a T-shirt or something.
Well, we'll download a pretty cool WebGL.
Yeah, the giant floating robot head. Yeah, it's actually in the video that we released when we released the version 1.1. Yeah, it's just we have roll. Let's see here. We have roll, pan, and tilt, and I hooked that up to a cube that kind of moved around, and then I made the mouth move up and down with volume. But although actually I want to go back and change that, so it actually moves with the top and bottom lip endpoints on the attach points. The other thing is I was able to go zoom in and out, and we're able to do zoom in and out by basically using the scale between your eye and the tip of your nose. that should stay constant the entire time. If your nose is like moving out someplace, it's going to be bad. That person's going to have suboptimal performance.
Yeah, I actually use the distance between the two eyes to measure the zoom,
Yeah,
so that's what I use for that.
That's more or less how the Wii works too. It sees those 2 points and zooms it in and out, and that's how you know how far away the controller is from the thing. Yeah, it works really well. I would worry that if I was using, well, it's probably the same either way. Whether if you turn your head and zoom in and out, whether the two eyes close together or these two close together are going to be better or worse. But anyway, it's pretty neat. I hope to release source for that really soon.
You also did some cool things like you added weighting and
absolutely used smoothing. I do well, I'll show you the code as soon as I can, but it's basically weight. I have a 5-frame smoothing, and I weight the most recent frame the highest, but still use those other 5 frames. It does mean that if you shake your head like this really fast, it doesn't move quite as much, but that's okay, as long as you're not like Richard Nixon or something.
I think the probability of Richard Nixon using your Hangout app is pretty low.
That would be pretty low. I should probably make a Richard Nixon robot head, too. That would be
Yeah, I was thinking about creating a head-controlled Pong game.
Mm-hmm.
You can just move the pedals by moving your head up and down or something, and like forward.
One of the things that I would absolutely recommend is that you put a mustache or something on whoever the face is tracking right now. Because one of the things I discovered during testing is it would lock on to somebody standing behind me. And I'd be like, God, it's not working. What's this? So I realized, oh wait, it's good.
Another cool idea that I heard was like soccer, or using your head to bounce the ball back up and down, and then knocking over to somebody else.
Head hacky sack.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool. Cool. So I see some questions are starting to pile up on the feed, and this is primarily a question and answer show. So if any of you out there would like to ask questions, go find the announcement post on the Google Plus Developers Plus page. And it should be pretty close to the top now because it's active. And it's also linked from the original post of this broadcast. And answer your question there, and we will respond to it live at some point in the session.
I have some questions.
You do?
I do. I actually have questions that Alan asked on the newsgroup that I haven't had a chance to respond to it yet. I figured we could ask Richard and JD. So here I'm gonna read from Alan. So if we don't set the scale for our bottom thirds or for our non-tracking overlays, what does the system assume?
I believe the default is width. The reference is width and a scale of 1.
Okay. Also, I know there's a method to get the display ratio. Will the ratio change during the Hangout?
No, it shouldn't.
Okay.
I think there is a slight small issue or mistake in the reference.
Okay.
Let me find it.
Live document debugging right
Yeah.
here.
We could change it at the same time. If my
Let's
laptop
get our-
runs,
let's get our dog
I would
started.
update it while we were
Yeah,
talking.
we should go change it. Okay.
Keep talking.
Yeah, if you can actually send us that link,
Yeah, send us a link.
we'll happy to update it.
Yep.
Okay, and the last question is about resolution of the feed. One of the things that's interesting is how much, how wide is the feed exactly, and so that I can make ideally sized like overlays. And I guess it'd be interesting for you guys to address some of that.
Sure. So the problem with that is it's camera dependent. And it's even more than that, it's camera dependent and like what we detect, like with reference to like your computer, like how much load there is and so forth. And so you can't really guarantee anything about the resolution. I think we could look into giving some guidelines on approximate like image sizes that we think might look good, but I don't think we'll ever be able to tell you exactly what the resolution is, so that you can optimize perfectly.
Yeah, I think we can understand and appreciate that. I think part of what it is, I think guidelines would really, really help.
Mm-hmm.
Or at the very least an API method that told us what the maximum resolution is, or something along those lines. Because I know when I started playing with the static graphics, that I pretty quickly figured out what the numbers were going to be that I usually ended up with, and that gave me an idea for what maximum I should design for. But even scaling down from that doesn't always look good, and certainly if I needed to scale up to that, it'll come out really badly.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's definitely work we can do in both providing like guidelines outside of the API to what looks good, and also trying to come up with ways in the API to give you feedback on what might look good in specific situations. That's definitely a to-do item for us, I think.
And we say this all the time, but since you've experimented, I'm sure other developers love to hear about sort of those ranges and how you found those useful. And we'd love to hear feedback in terms of what we should be recommending too.
Great.
So those are all the questions.
Yeah, those are Alan's questions.
Unless you thought of any in the interim, Alan.
Oh, I've thought of plenty in the interim. And in fact, I know I emailed some of them last night while I was in the middle of trying to get the clock working. The documentation indicates that the URLs for an image resource should be either HTTP, HTTPS, or a data URL. I had trouble getting the HTTPS one working, and one of the things I realized is there's no error called if it can't load an image resource for whatever reason. A, am I correct about the fact that HTTPS is not supported? And B, is there supposed to be some indication somewhere that it can't load a resource? And I guess the follow-up to C is if either of those are no, what can be done to change this?
Okay, so HTTPS should work, and if you're experiencing problems, then
well, one thing you can do is absolutely send us a piece of sample code that demonstrates the error, and we can take a look at that definitely. I saw your email and was like, yeah, that's interesting. Let me go try that, and I haven't had a chance to try it yet.
B, you are correct that we do not currently provide any feedback as to whether the image was loaded or not, and we're working on it. Like that's definitely high on the list of things that we want to add, I think.
Just better feedback, or specifically about the overlays?
Well, just when an overlay fails to load.
Yeah, I think in general for any image resources, we'll look into adding some type of event that tells you when it loaded and if it loaded.
In my case, I just posted the code in the chat. I'm basically just doing the / and just leaving out the HTTP or HTTPS, so the Hangout determines whatever it should use, but actually it should use HTTPS because the Hangout is running HTTPS as well. and this is working fine without any error or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I couldn't get it to use a relative URL at all.
But
I figured it out. I had some issues while I was running my apps on my own server, that it has issues with like a non-trusted certificate and stuff. But since I run everything on AppSpot, it's running perfectly fine.
Yeah, that would be my guess for you, Alan, is that it has something to do with the certificate that is being used. The Talk plugin isn't quite as accepting as like Chrome is, so you might be able to hit the URL in Chrome, but the Talk plugin might have issues with the certificate. But we can look at that, outside the scope of this.
Alan, I'm more talking about a protocol relative URL.
So instead of just a relative URL, it's HTTPS. Instead of saying HTTPS:// whatever, you just leave off the first HTTPS:// and then it'll just use whatever the relative whatever protocol you use to get there, it'll use that one to get the next resource.
You'll see that.
Right, but in this case, that would have failed because it loads the rest of the resources loads the rest of the resources securely, but it can't load the image resources securely.
Well, in your case, and we should definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, we'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, so like I said, send us a link send us some code and a link to the image that's not working, and we'd be curious.
Cool. So, are there any other questions in the Hangout?
What about adding animated GIF support?
Animated GIFs as overlays?
Yeah. Right now, you only can load PNGs and JPEGs.
And data URLs.
Well, data URLs that contain.
And data URLs, sure. An animated GIF would be quite cool. I had some ideas with that.
Yeah, I think that's an option. I think also just better support for animating image resources in general, such that you can have some guarantees about like showing and hiding images will happen in the same frame. Could help with that too. It's not the same. Like an animated GIF is obviously an easier way to do it, but I think both of those things are something we should work on.
And would it also be possible to like add text or other elements to the UI without like messing up the whole video pane? Like just adding somewhere a bottom or text somewhere in the UI as an addition in the DOM.
Give us an example.
Yeah, what kind of thing are you looking for?
What was it?
What exactly? Where in the interface do you want to add this text?
Yes, can you give us a specifics? A story. Tell us a story about how you do.
For example, my volume control app, right? I have the mute hangout button, and if I want to place the button not inside the left extension pane, and I want to move it up where the microphone and video mute buttons are, something like that.
So you want to influence the outer Chrome of the UI.
Right.
It would be really cool. There's a lot of potential there, but.
I mean, sure, you can mess around a lot then, but if you do it right, you can produce some awesome stuff.
I mean, just put white boxes over everything.
You can no longer exit.
Yes, it's the no exit.
No exit button makes sense.
Until the Hangout cuts out.
Yeah, that way you can actually create like your own themes for Hangouts.
Cool.
That has been a feature that a lot of people who were broadcasting without using Hangouts on air have been requesting.
I mean, just the Hangouts team in general is looking at every day looking at how to improve the UI, and we've gone through at least 2 major UI refreshes since we launched. And the developer feature has to go hand in hand with the user experience, the end user feature. So that's great feedback for thinking about the future. There is no plans, as I know of today, to add that, but that's something to look into.
Yeah. Cool.
A broad question about resources and image resources. There's a note in the API guide that warns us that once images are allocated in the plugin, they can't be deallocated. How big of a problem is this really, and is there any work being done on being able to free up those resources?
Yes, there is work being done, and it's probably not a problem unless you're loading like hundreds or thousands of images.
I was going to say I've definitely crashed the Hangout when I was loading images like crazy, but that was when I was loading them almost every frame. Just loading different images.
I mean, certainly we've tried with 100 images on a MacBook Air and it works, or 100 overlays, and that's not a problem. So I can tell you that's my benchmark.
Okay, the reason I ask is I know when Moritz and I had been talking about doing digital clocks, and one of the questions was, well, why don't you just create a canvas, put the text on it, and replace the image from the canvas every minute or every second? And I'm like, well, because you're allocating all these images and they're never going to get freed up. And there was
crash.
And there were some people who were surprised, like, come on, you've got to be freeing up the image resources somewhere. I'm like, the documentation says they don't get freed up.
Yeah, I mean, we it's definitely important for us to provide a way for you to free them up to do things like that. But for now, I would say as a general guideline, if you're, in the low hundreds of images, it's probably won't have much of a problem.
It depends on how big they are.
And also,
yeah, that's true.
I noticed, that also includes other like overlays. So the sound overlays also take up memory and do not get freed up. So if you have a bunch of images and a bunch of sounds,
yes,
you should be
careful.
By the way, are the sounds broadcasted to all the participants or only locally? I think only locally, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and actually, if you play them through the plugin, they are more likely to be noise canceled, which is a great use for like if you want to alert somebody without alerting everybody, rather than using like an HTML5 audio tag or something. You can just be like bong through the plugin. So if you're making a game that takes turns or something like that, it's a great use for it.
Yeah, that's probably the best part about using the audio in the API is that you should get echo cancellation most of the time.
Yeah. Are you planning on broadcasting sounds to our participants like you do with the overlay?
Yeah, that's a heavily requested feature and something we're looking at adding.
Cool. And also, what I would like to see, with my volume control, when I mute the Hangout, now I have the overlay to indicate that I muted the Hangout. But it would also be cool, like you have the notifications on top of the Hangout, that I'm able to like broadcast these notifications to all the participants. Like when I block someone, it shows up in everybody's Hangout.
Yeah.
So it like alerts the people in the Hangout that I muted the Hangout for me.
Yeah, we only provide that the same way we did the set avatar, which is that you'd have to set shared state and then have each of the individual apps post it themselves.
Right.
But yeah, that's cool.
Agreed.
And another more general thing is a lot of people asking me how they can remove an app they installed, which is currently not possible. Because when you try out a lot of apps and at some point you think, the app is not worth having it installed and you want to remove it, there's no way to do it. Revoke access, but this is not enough. The app is still showing up in your recent tab and whatever.
It could be incriminating, depending on you have poker in there in your work account or something.
Yeah.
Work for a video game company, isn't that?
Well, yeah.
So, yeah, we agree. Like, we definitely need a way to do that. It's in progress. You can revoke the permissions for the app.
Yes. You can go into you can go to google.com/dashboard.
Right.
And click on the revoke permissions.
They really have no permissions out. If you don't run them in the Hangout, they really have no permission to do anything. They're not running. It's not like they're offline apps. But yes, that will be coming soon.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just an artifact of the fact that on the Hangouts we're moving really fast. So lots of cool stuff is coming out. This is just one of those rough edges where we'll clean it up. Hang tight.
it's a happy problem to have that people have too many apps that they feel like they need to remove.
Exactly.
I mean, as I develop a lot, I have about probably 40 that are just called Hangout app. So I'd love to get that feature.
So fill in your metadata, people.
Yeah.
Especially you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I
Be a good
think I
example.
may actually be the person who has the most apps in their API console. I think I win. Yeah, and everybody who calls them Hangout Gadget, it's just like I have this sea of Hangout gadgets.
Cool. You want to jump to the comment stream?
Sure, yeah. So I'm going to be reading some comments or some questions from the comment stream. So again, if you're watching, and you'd like to ask a question, go to the Google Plus or the Google Plus developers page, and you can ask there. There's an announcement post where you can post your questions, and we'll find them and answer them. So I'm going to start from the oldest questions first. And Joshua Owen asked yesterday, way ahead of the curve, asked a question, is there any way through the DOM to identify the user's film strip partitions on the bottom film strip? It would be great if we could drag and drop things from our Hangout app onto a person's partition to initiate actions.
So two answers to that. One, yes, you do have their film strip position. It's in the participant object, so you can use that. And I don't know if we'll do anything as complicated as drag and drop, but we've definitely identified that people want sort of a quick way to do some action that's based on the user. So we'll be looking into ways that maybe we can either surface click events on the film strip or something like that, so that people can initiate an action on a particular user without having to re-implement that UI.
No, sorry, finish first.
Like volume control, right? I mean, you have that list, but it might just be easier if it's like click on a person and then adjust their volume.
I think related to that is also the question that I get a bit is, are you guys looking at being able to position the individual small thumbnails elsewhere on the screen, like we can position the large video stream anywhere on the screen?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at that.
Awesome.
And I've seen people experiment with the film strip position, for example, because if you know how many participants you have and you kind of know how wide each object is, and using the drag data from the JavaScript, you know when you exit the iframe, right? So you can just assume, kind of that they're there. So
you can put little air hockey gates at the bottom of the screen for each.
It's definitely a hack though, because any minor tweak to the UI could screw that up. Right?
There's also a problem where if you have an extension open, then you can't actually get to some people on the film strip, right? It will obscure the people on the left, for example.
Right. So if you do something like that, a visual indication on the bottom of the screen, that proxying that location would probably help a little bit, but it would be a hack. But it would work probably.
We will definitely look into a way to have some way to select people via the film strip.
Cool. Okay. So moving on to the next question. Iqbal asked, I need a consistent, unique ordering for all participants of a Hangout. I thought display index would be suited for this. However, I've periodically run into the situation where it seems multiple participants have the same display index value. Can somebody explain this? This seems to be related to whether a user is just present in the Hangout or they've started my Hangout app.
Interesting. Well, so I'd say taking it from the end back, I would say multiple people having the same display index seems like a bug to me. So we should probably look into whether that happens. And as for the first part, just getting the consistent numbering, I think, Wolf, you've had a feature request open for that as well. An absolute ordering, based on when they join.
I'd be really interested in knowing either an absolute order. You can do it a little bit by looking at the timestamp on when they arrived in the Hangout. You have somebody just call a set shared state as soon as they walk in, and then just declare that's an arbitrary order. It's not necessarily the order they appear in the film strip, but it is an arbitrary ordering.
Right.
Well, if you don't care about the ordering getting like people jumping in the middle, you can sort by like Hangout ID or something too.
Yeah.
Like, it just depends on what you're looking for, I guess.
Right. I mean, I would definitely like to add, just because it's super easy for us to add. I would definitely like to add some sort of absolute ordering. But in terms of the display index, my expectation would be that they were always different. So that's a surprise to hear.
He actually updated his post with an edit and said, "Just realized I'm using get participants while using get enabled participants guarantees that display index is unique, consistent ordering across all users." And he ends with a question mark. So.
Interesting.
I think the question we should raise is get participants versus get enabled participants.
Actually, I know what this. I wonder if that might be that if they leave, well, then they disappear.
I think the problem might be that the display index. If I have the display index 2 for someone else in the Hangout might have the same person at display index 3, because the ordering isn't unique among all participants. So that might be the problem he's having.
I think that's true. I think that you can't guarantee that participants will be displayed in the same order for everyone in the Hangout.
So that might be the problem, that the display index 2 is different for me than for someone else in the Hangout.
Well, Jonathan, can you forward that message to me? We'll definitely fix that.
Assuming it's buggy, we will fix it.
Yes. Thanks for the bug report. So moving on to the next question. G10 asks, is it possible to access Picasa photos within a Google Plus Hangout that were shared from another Picasa web account? So within these, or actually, someone else like to field this one? All right, I will field it.
Yeah, actually, it is possible, because if it's a public photo, you can access it, because you can access all Picasa photos, so you can use the Picasa Data API to access those photos. You just would need the Google ID of the person you want to have the photos access of. And with the now with the possibility that you can actually add OAuth scopes to your Hangout, the ones you want, you can actually request limited photos as well, which have been shared with you in some cases.
That is super awesome feature enhancement that we just rolled out. And I know you worked on a photo app, so why don't you explain a little bit about, what you had to do to that, because it's not so straightforward.
Yeah, so actually for my photo app, I'm using the Picasa Data API to access the photos. So I'm taking my Google ID and use it to access the Picasa Data API, and there I can request the albums which I have, and I can request the photos in the albums, and then I just put the link to the photo actually put into the shared state, so the others have the link for the photo to be displayed. And this should work for my photos or for the photos of others as well. So if I know the link to a photo, I can share it in the Hangout.
Pretty neat.
So actually, I could just screen share the app if you want, if anyone's interested.
Sure, go ahead.
And you're using the JS client, right?
Actually, for the data API, I'm just using the JSON requests to access it. So let's see if I can screen share this. Whoop. Let's see if this works. Okay, do you see it? So actually what I'm doing on this side here, I'm just loading all my Picasa albums, the public Picasa albums, via the Picasa Data API, and then I just can choose one album. And so this sidebar here, this is only private to me in the Hangout app. And now if I choose like one photo, it shares the link with all the other people who are using the app, and they can see the same display if they are using the app. So that's about it what I'm doing. And if you, actually it should be possible if you do access albums of other people, as long as they are public and you have the ID. So in this case I'm just pre-filling the API with my Google ID, so it accesses my albums, but in the same way you can access the public albums of other people as well. So you could actually just say, I want to access the public albums of Richard, and then it would be able to display them and share those photos as well.
And that, again, that's using the Picasa GData API,
Yeah.
which is implemented on our developer site. Unrelated to Google+, but because Picasa and Google+ Photos are related, he's able to do that cool integration.
Yeah, the photos on Google Plus use the Picasa backend, so that's the relationship between them. The Picasa APIs allow you to access some of them. Cool. Thank you very much for demoing that. That was really neat. So continuing through the questions, Joshua asks another question. What is the best way to detect when a Hangout app gets unloaded so that I could do some cleanup once it's been unloaded, for example? Anyone?
I mean, I guess.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
What is the best way to detect when a Hangout app becomes unloaded? For example, if we want to do cleanup.
So we don't really have. I mean, we don't have this notion of. I guess there's two answers to that, right? There's the other people that are, other instances of the app can detect that. Yeah, so other instances of the app could detect that person's left the app if they want to do cleanup there. What we don't have is we don't have a way that the app instance itself, when it gets unloaded, has time to do anything. We basically just kill it off. So it's an open question of whether that's a good thing to do. I guess there are some nice things that could be done there.
Well, yeah, it's sort of like the on-app hidden event.
Yeah, so there's the on-app hidden, which I think is the second answer to that, because apps still run if you hide it. So, for example, if you toggle an extension, or if the app switch over to the video feed, at that point we fire an event that says, I think it's exactly what you call it, on-app hidden. So if you have an animation, you might want to pause the animation, or if you've queued up background data that you need to send off to your server, that's maybe a good time to do that. And if you want to do something, if a user leaves and there's other users still in your app, then you could do the on-participant enable, and the on-enable participant changed and say, hey, we have a lost user, let's change the game or something.
Cool. That sounds like
Yeah, I've had this. People have asked me this question as well in regards to suggestions that I've made about how to trigger something when a Hangout is started with an app. How it can then go communicate with the web server. They said, well, how do you do the opposite? If a person leaves without anybody showing up, how do you clear that value? And I said, that's a really good question. And the best solution that I had come up with that I hadn't tested yet was to attach something to the iframe and detect when the iframe was closed. So when it receives an on-close event, or I forget the correct name of the event. But I haven't tested it yet, and I don't know for sure how it'll work, how well it'll work, or what other problems there are associated with that.
Cool. Thanks for the possible solution, which would work in most cases. If someone killed the process of their web browser,
Yeah, you
for
wouldn't
example,
know.
you wouldn't get that.
Yeah, in that case, you almost might consider a keep alive.
Yeah, keep alive or
just-
heartbeat.
Yeah, just be like once a minute, be like, oh, this Hangout's still going with this app, and then, oh, this Hangout's not going anymore, and then just murder yourself on the server.
Interesting.
And keep alive, one way, which I've been experimenting with this morning, is Google Analytics.
Google Analytics for Keep Alive?
Yeah, right? So with the new real-time infrastructure.
Oh, the real-time
Are you actually
infrastructure.
recommending that, Jonathan?
No, I was just playing around with Google Analytics this morning, and I've been doing some things around trying to look at because they have an API, right? RESTful API as well as a JavaScript wrapper. So there's some cool things that you can experiment with inside of a Hangout. So.
Yeah, this is actually a problem that's existed in web applications pretty much from the beginning, is you don't know when people disappear.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of solutions out there on the web, and any solution that's been out there to solve this problem for regular traditional web applications will also be able to help you figure out, for example, if you have server-side state you need to clean up when the Hangout app is closed.
Close some file handles, whatever
Exactly.
it is that you need to do.
Yeah, cool. Okie doke. So moving on to the next one. Chad asks, is there any chance that facial tracking will be able to support multiple faces? So, like we have right here, 4 people on camera.
Wow, that would be cool.
It would.
I like how they just laugh and Kirk like,
Okay, moving on to the next one.
Then we have soon some, Kinect games in Hangout.
yeah, we have no announcements about that.
I will say, just as we're developing and two of us on the screen, the standard use case for Hangouts is you in front of your laptop. Definitely, right now we're behind a camera and it's getting all four of us, but most people use Hangouts, while they're on their laptop or.
Yeah, and like I said, this is the use case why you need to mark with when you're doing puppets, like the giant 3D robot floating head, or playing a game with your head. Like mark which face you are actually attached to. It should say 1 up. No, what's P1.
P1, P2, P3, P4.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I think his next question was, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if there's WebGL? And the answer is, yeah, that'd be so cool. That's how the 3D robot floating head works. It's in 3JS. Again.
Yeah, he even did something simpler. He said, I want to see a face track in my profile image. And somebody was demoing JD.
Yeah.
I don't actually have this app.
But what it was,
accessible.
It was a picture of John Malkovich, and his mouth was moving with your mouth, and it did face tracking as well. So it's doable with the current API.
Is that one open source anywhere?
I have no idea. JD was the one who was playing with it.
Yeah. So a lot of the Hangout applications are actually open source. So if you track them down, sometimes you can figure out how people did them too. But
right-click view source.
that works also. Cool. So I'm just moving up the stream of questions.
But yeah, I would actually add that WebGL is really great in Hangouts as opposed to Flash because it's running natively rather than running in a plugin. It's awesome.
Gurren has some experience, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
I think, Gurren, you were the first person to try WebGL instead of a Hangout. So you get that.
Yeah, I think it was the first thing I tried with a Hangout app, actually. So.
Cool. Okay, so there's a question unrelated to Hangouts API that Harold asks that I will answer. Harold asks, I use the Google +1 button on a web page, and it seems that Google Apps users can't use it. The complaint is that login is required in response to the RPC call. He's also having a challenge with the badge, which renders as a big white box. So this could depend on a lot of things, and the easiest thing is for us to just hook up and troubleshoot. It could be an issue. Because this is JavaScript that's running on your page, it can sometimes be a conflict with other JavaScript on your page, or even web server configuration, because our buttons will fetch your page to create the snippet, and if they can't access it for some reason, our page fetchers can't access it, that will cause problems also. So in other reasons, there's a lot of things that could be causing these issues. So I'll loop back with you after the broadcast, and we'll solve your problems. But get back to you. So moving up the thread, while I'm poking around on the thread, does anyone in the Hangout have any other questions or comments they'd like to chat about? Announcements?
So I actually don't have a question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Garen.
Yeah, so I actually don't have a question, but a suggestion really, because you just started with the on-air functionality in Hangout apps. There's actually 3 things I want to see in there. There's actually what I think would be interesting to see who's the one hosting the Hangout on air. So which of the participants is the one who broadcasts, so that he maybe can get special privileges inside of the Hangout app. Then there's the thing with the YouTube URL to see, so you can link it, or I can use it in the comment tracker, and then also the link to the broadcast URL on G+, the post which announces the. So those are actually the 3 things. Actually, I would be happy with the broadcast already because there's a lot of things you could do with that.
Yeah,
and I think
the
it should be easy to
outgoing
add.
volume.
What's that?
Being able to adjust the outgoing volume to the video stream, so you can use volume control to adjust actually the video audio levels from all the participants as a host.
Okay.
Yeah.
All good suggestions.
Yeah, and definitely, more metadata about the Hangout on Air is what I'm hearing. Has anybody ever tried to put the Hangout on Air broadcast inside the Hangout? Like, what would happen? It's like the IT crowd searching for Google inside Google causes the internet to close.
And do a screen share with the video overlay.
Exactly. Screen share the broadcast inside the Hangout. That would be awesome to try that.
Do you want to try it right now? Maybe next maybe next session.
I don't want to set fire to this room, so you better not.
Yeah, the room, we're in a new room, which is not as equipped as previous ones, so we don't want our work laptops to catch on fire.
Mm.
But later, when it's a different computer,
Yeah,
we make it listen dry.
we'll see if we open a wormhole in time and space.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't own a fire retardant suit.
You don't.
Nope.
Why not?
I wouldn't be
man?
surprised if you do that.
Yeah, let's get this.
They're useful when doing things like welding. We call them wool. Wool clothing is very fire resistant. Just in case you were wondering,
You
everyone.
don't have asbestos gloves?
No, I actually don't.
They gave those to us in high school. It was amazing. It was like, later on, perhaps they regretted that, but as it was.
Anyway, moving on. Chetan asked a question earlier about the Picasa photos being accessible from the Hangout app. Actually clarifies the question. Actually, I mean for non-public Picasa web photos shared via Google Plus from a different account. So I'm assuming this would be if Martin would share a photo with just me, would I be able to access? We can access our own Picasa web via OAuth, but there doesn't seem to be a way to access the photo that Martin shared to me, for example. Is there a way? So this is starting to get to one of kind of the corners of where using these multiple APIs together doesn't always work wonderfully. The Picasa web APIs do not include all of the features of the security model of Google Plus, for example, which is built on the same backend but uses a slightly different system for managing all the sharing and stuff. I am not aware of a way to do this specific thing. It's a great question, and I do not believe you can do it with the current APIs that are available. But I think you've done more hacking on these APIs than I have, Gerwin. Do you have any input?
Yeah, I actually only use the public APIs without the OAuth, so I'm not sure what is possible with the Picasa database. They are actually a bit difficult to work with, to actually get to know how to use them, so I haven't really went into the OAuth stuff with the Picasa APIs.
Understood. Yeah, they're using our older GData style APIs, which are different than the APIs that, for example, Google Plus uses. And as a result, they have a little bit more rough edges. We learned a lot when we built all that API infrastructure, and as a result, we like our new APIs a lot more. So you're in an interesting case where you're having to work with both of them at the same time, which is challenging. And if you do find a way, let us know. It's cool. And with that question, we're actually just about out of time.
Well, there's one question I wanted to answer.
Oh, there's one question you wanted to answer, yeah?
Somebody asked, where do you get all those cool stickers on your laptop? So, this one right here, this G Plus sticker, you can actually buy from the online Google store. We just started shipping that. So you get like a pack of 5 for $1 US, and I'm pretty sure it ships international.
Yeah, and we have the old plus one button. We have all kinds of. We have the JS.
But the only one you can buy is this guy.
Yeah.
Actually, my HTML5 one, which I'm very proud of, you can get from the HTML5 site and a bunch of other places. The JS one, the logo's not open source, so you can print it yourself. And the Hangouts one and the Circles one, you'll have to bribe us.
Yeah. You'll have to do awesome.
Yes.
Do extra awesome.
I actually send out stickers to people who do cool things or help me out, or help the community. So if you release source code, I can send you stickers.
Yeah, so do cool stuff.
You
Let us
like
know.
move his laundry over or something. He's like, dude, it's bigger.
There are a couple of questions on the YouTube page that may be of interest. Somebody asked, as a regular user, is there a page that lists the Hangout apps, anything like the Chrome Web Store for Hangout apps? I know that we all needed to register with the Chrome Web Store. What are the plans for a web store for Hangout apps?
Well, hangoutapps.com has been doing a pretty good job of listing all of
Yeah,
that.
that's a community project. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, the short answer for that is there are plans, and we're still developing them. A lot of it is based off feedback. The main way that people discover it is through the viral nature of apps. So I'm using a Hangout with an app, and you discover it. And then we're recommending people make plus pages to drive traffic to their Hangout app. Either a Hangout app per plus page, or if you have a sort of brand that you've created around your apps, or just my apps plus page. And Google is trying to we strive to build platforms for developers. So a way to distribute and monetize is definitely on our radar, and we're working towards that.
Great.
You had somebody who agrees with the special privileges of the Hangout creator to boot and mute a user who's causing a problem. And I know that comes up frequently in the Hangout discussions. And a request, please implement messaging from G+ app to the web browser while a friend is within your circle. What's kind of the plans for interaction between the app and the chat window?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously that's a big request. I think there's some sensitivity around chat. I don't know quite if that's pushing stuff into the chat window or pulling it out. Pulling it out is obviously
yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at those issues and we're trying to solve some of them.
Yeah, we're working through the chat issue, but we're just very cautious about interacting with the chat too much because we don't want it to either become too noisy, and we also don't want to compromise the privacy of anyone in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking a cautious approach to this particular feature, but there's some cool potential there, so we'll see.
Okay, and finally from the YouTube chats, several people thanking for the answer, and finally, this is an awesome Hangout.
And it's awesome because all of you guys joined us.
From Google engineers to all of our community, it's really been great.
And the overlap of our community and Google engineering. So thanks very much for everyone for joining. This has been a really great session in our new location, which will hopefully have a dinosaur next time.
Yeah, we need your whiteboard so I can dinosaur it.
Or some, we'll figure it out. There will be a dinosaur.
Somebody will provide a dinosaur.
Yes. But in regard to this video, there will be an edited version published to the Google Plus developers page that will include the show notes, like we have for every session, and then it'll be up later today or tomorrow. In the meantime,
Also the YouTube Google Developers playlist.
yes, it will also be added to youtube.com/Google Developers way at the bottom of the page under the Google Plus Platform Office Hours. It'll also be visible there. And the show notes will be there too. So, well, until next session, thanks everyone for joining us. See you later.
Thank you.
Happy.
Bye.